Fala galera, welcome to a new episode of the Strategy Foundation series. This time let's talk about data management, users, groups, roles, privileges, and permission. Most companies treat data access as a technical configuration problem, but in reality, data access is like a strategy problem. It defines speed, trust, governance, security, and even more, it defines company culture. Today I want to connect two worlds, users and groups, and then privileges, securities, and roles. Bringing this together will give us a proper data access strategy, as you will see in the video. Alright, so let's start with the basic part, users and groups. As you can see here, I'm logged in Strategy Workstation tool. I'm connected to one of my environments. And then if I go here to the users and groups blade of Workstation, you can see here a whole bunch of users, right? What is a user in that sense? Well, basically, a user is an individual identity in the system. It can be your employees, your analysts, your engineers, every individual person who needs access to the system, to the platform, to the environment. Of course, not everyone can see that users and group list here, only the administrators, which we'll talk about later. But here you can see, if you are an administrator, you can see a list of users. You can see if they are enabled, disabled, all that sort of stuff. You see then in Workstation, and of course, if we go, for example, to a strategy library, you will normally see your user when you're logging in. Right now, I'm logging in with a username called MSTR, and then I click Login with Credentials, right? This time, I'm now logged in into Strategy Library. If I need to log out, I click the top right button here, Account, and then I go and do Logout. You can see here the username, and then you just go and click Logout. So first things first, a user is an individual identity in the system. Normally is a person, but it's not necessarily a person. It's more like a trust contract between the organization and the identity. All right, so that's the first thing. Now moving to groups, as you can see here, just below users, we have user groups. Well, what are groups in the first place? Groups are basically logical collections of users, and these will be based on department like finance, sales. So those specific departments can be a group. By default, strategy has some user groups created. As you can see here, MicroStrategy groups. If you keep going down, you'll see a whole bunch of other groups inside of that one. And then we have subgroups, like for example, we can see here mobile users. If I double click mobile users, I'll be able to see which users belong to that group, as you can see right now here, right? All these users, they belong to the group called mobile users. All right, let me save this one or cancel in this case. Notice that for both users and then for groups, we have the standard ones, but we can also create new ones. There's this button here for new groups. So instead of using the standard one, I can create my groups, let's say the sales department group, something like this. And then I add users to it. All right, so this is the first concept. We just talked about users and groups. Let's move now to security roles and privileges. I'm right now here in Workstation. You see security roles, a whole bunch of roles available here. If I double click one of these roles, don't make confusion. This is not a group. This is a role. You will see here a little description of what this role means. And then you will see the privileges tab. So in other words, what is a security role? It's a group of privileges. Right? And by the way, what is a privilege in this case? Privileges are actions that a user or a group can perform in the system. As you can see here, that analyst security role contains the following privileges. So They can create derived metrics, use developer, and do a whole bunch of other things. Those are the actions that me as a user or a group of analysts will be able to do once logged in the system. Right now you can see those actions, and here you can cancel. Remember, those actions are the privileges, and you group them into security roles. You can create new ones. As you see here, if I click this button, I'll be able to create a new security role. Let me call it a mosaic role, something like this. And then I give or I assign the proper privileges or actions users or groups will be able to do. I can search for mosaic in this example here and grant the following actions to that security role. So every user or group giving or receiving that role later, they will be able to create or actually use Mosaic Studio, use Universal Access, Mosaic Data Catalog, and Mosaic Sentinel. With this, we can now have very clear what is a privilege. As you can see here, it's an action a user or a group can perform. And then what is a role? It's a group of these privileges. Of course, later I'll be assigning this to users or groups right here in the Members tab. Now let's talk about permissions. As you notice, I'm not in the Users and Groups tab anymore. I'm in the Dashboards tab, but I could be in Projects, I could be in Documents, could be in any other tab right here, because permissions relates to who can view or have permission, as we call it, right? To view, to execute, or to modify an object. An object can be a dashboard, as I mentioned here. For example, if I right-click this dashboard right here, and then if I go to Properties, which should be right here in the middle, notice that I have Security Access, and this is Permissions, right? So who can modify, who can view, who can delete, who can have full control, or who is denied to have access to that object. So it's a different concept, although it relates again to management of your data, right? In this case, of your objects. I am enabling or disabling access to the following user groups to that dashboard. So let's say if I go here and I define that the developers will be denied access to this dashboard right here, I mean that those users in this group here, they won't be able to see that dashboard. Of course, they will be able to create a new dashboard because that is a privilege, as we discussed before, but they don't have permission to view this specific one. And remember, I'm talking about this one here, which is a dashboard, but it could be a mosaic model, it could be a document, it could be a report. All these objects here, if you right-click and then if you go to Properties, you will always be able to see here the Security Access tab or blade, and then you control who is given or who is denied permission to view or to modify this object right here. So with this, we are finishing with the explanations on security roles, permissions, privileges, all those things that we saw in this video. Let me give you a final bonus right here. I'm not sure if you noticed this, but just below user groups, we have contacts and contact groups. And that's something that causes confusion sometimes. People say, what is a contact? Well, basically, a contact is a metadata object in strategy terminology used to store personal or descriptive information, like a name or email address, phone number. Basically, we use those contacts for subscriptions, notifications, distribution of reports, and alerting, right? So it's not like a user. It's mainly used for a different purpose. If you want to understand it better, I'm sending you here, I'm putting it here a little comparison table that shows the difference between a contact and then a user. As you can see, a contact cannot log in while a user can. A contact don't have any privileges, doesn't have any permissions. It's mainly used for receiving emails and for subscriptions, which are things you can also do for a user. All right, so that was it for this one. As you just noticed, data management is a very important topic. We need to properly define our users and groups, and then define which of these users or groups will have the correct privileges, permissions, so they can be accessing the correct information that belongs to them, no matter if it's a dashboard or if it's a mosaic model or any object that we have in strategy. So think carefully about this topic because it's a very important one. And once more, I would like to thank you for watching the video. As I normally say, I'll see you at the next corner.